Bracing for impact, tropical cyclone Kirrily intensifies as it bears down on the city of Townsville.
If your home is not safe, please make the decision early to get out of it.
Also tonight, the conflicting accounts of the downing of a Russian military plane that killed 74 people, among them 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war. Defending a broken promise and changes to tax cuts, the Prime Minister appeals for voters to trust him. And the court battle over a type of curry in India. Just who invented buttered chicken, a dish popular around the world? I'm Janice Petersen. This is SBS World News. Good evening. Severe tropical cyclone Kirrily has intensified as it tracks towards Townsville in North Queensland, with landfall expected about 10 o'clock tonight local time. Now a Category 3 cyclone, bringing wind gusts of up to 165 kilometres per hour. It's forecast to cross the coast close to the city of around 180,000 people. Local authorities there fear thousands of homes will be impacted, with hundreds likely to be left uninhabitable. Our reporter Claudia Farhat is in Townsville for us tonight. Good evening, Claudia. What are conditions like there at the moment?
Well, Janice, the rain has now arrived and the wind is really picking up. The windows behind me have been rattling almost constantly for the last couple of hours now. Since about 2 p.m. local time, the advice from authorities here in Townsville has been to stay off the roads and to shelter in place. So that's why we, like most of the city, are indoors right now. When we got that late upgrade to a Category 3 cyclone this afternoon, it really did make a lot of people here very nervous. But the good news is that the Bureau has been warning that this cyclone is coming for days, so people have had a lot of time to prepare for it. In Townsville, the work began early in the morning. After a week of warnings, the cyclone is almost here, and preparing for it is a whole family effort.
My yard usually floods within 20 minutes, so I'm just a bit worried at the moment. You know, you can see little black cockatoos walking around on the ground, and you know that it's a sign for big rain coming.
The overwhelming consensus in Townsville: hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So sand and bags to put it in are running low.
I'm just getting some sand ready just in case for the house, but we're out of bags, so I'm just improvising.
So you got the Woolies bag?
I've got my trusty Woolies bag, yeah.
These are the areas most likely to be impacted, low-lying and right on the shore. This is Saunders Beach, which authorities say could be isolated for the next 3 days.
Just stocked up with food and we've got a generator, so secured our property, made sure our pets are in, and obviously we've all been to Dan's.
Those who've chosen to stay have spent the last few days bringing whatever they can inside and tying down everything else.
Part of my preparation for the cyclone was lashing down the chairs around the table. We've moved everything away that's light that can be floated away, and everything else is either strapped down or bolted down.
For some, sheltering in place is no longer an option. This is one of 2 evacuation centres they've set up here in Townsville. It's pretty empty at the moment, but it can fit up to 800 people, and they're expecting it to fill up over the coming hours as the cyclone gets closer and closer. They've got backup generators here and more than 40,000 litres of drinking water, enough to last everyone 3 days should they need it. How are the kids feeling?
Oh, pretty scared. They didn't want to stay there, so we had to move out.
Queensland's Premier, Stephen Miles, says he's confident in the state's preparation and urged those in flood-prone areas to consider evacuating before it's too late.
If your home is not safe, please make the decision early to get out of it.
Local rescue crews have been bolstered by reinforcements from Brisbane and Sydney, flying in just before the airport shut down.
Swiftwater rescue and flood rescue will be the first priority post the event, but after that it'll be also part of the recovery and helping the community clean up and get back to normality as soon as possible.
Townsville Council is expecting more than 12,000 homes to be directly impacted by the cyclone, and it says as many as 620 could be left uninhabitable.
So, Claudia, what's likely to happen in the next few hours?
Well, Janice, we're likely to see the worst of the weather arrive here in Townsville in the next few hours. Severe cyclone Kirrily is expected to make its landfall right here in the city at about 10 p.m. local time. And because it's been upgraded to that Category 3, it means we're likely going to see destructive to very destructive winds gusting up to 165 kilometres an hour. So at that level, the Bureau of Meteorology says to expect things like roofs coming off houses, to expect significant damage to trees and to crops, and also some damage, structural damage to properties as well. Also in the path of the cyclone, they're expecting very heavy rainfall. So they've told communities to be on alert for flash flooding too. And with power lines likely to come down, they say power failures and power outages are also going to be likely tonight. Certainly not ideal for a nighttime cyclone crossing, but authorities say they do have highly skilled, highly trained swiftwater rescue teams on standby to assist right throughout the evening. The orders to shelter in place are likely going to remain throughout the night, likely a very tense night, Janice, and that means we probably aren't going to have a clear idea of the scale of the damage until tomorrow morning at the earliest.
A tough night ahead. Thanks so much, our reporter Claudia Farhart, updating us from Townsville. Moscow is accusing Ukraine of deliberately shooting down a Russian military transport plane which it claims was carrying 65 Ukrainian soldiers who were being moved ahead of a prisoner exchange. Ukraine has not denied downing the aircraft and cannot confirm if its captured soldiers were on board. The plane came down in the village of Yablonovo, not far from the Russian city of Belgorod and around 85 kilometres from the Ukrainian border. Kyiv says it had not been told to ensure safe airspace over the region to enable the prisoner swap and said Russia had deliberately put the lives of the captured soldiers at risk.
The only thing that can be said with any certainty is that a Russian military transport plane crashed. The enormous fireball an indication there were no survivors, something the local governor later confirmed. Witnesses reported hearing two distinct blasts.
Резко начал падать вниз. Потом вот он упал вот здесь за лесом. Это мой дом, за домом туда вот лесок, за лесом там взорвался, был взрыв. Очень сильный взрыв.
According to Russia, there were 6 crew, 3 Russian soldiers and 65 captured Ukrainian servicemen on board ahead of a planned prisoner exchange.
Вместо того, чтобы этот обмен состоялся, украинская сторона из района Харьковской области нанесла зенитными ракетами удар по этому самолету, который стал фатальным.
Russian lawmakers were also quick to blame Ukraine, claiming missiles supplied by Kyiv's Western allies brought down the aircraft without providing evidence.
Своих солдат расстреляли в воздухе. Своих. Там их матери ждали, жены ждали, дети ждали.
Video taken at the crash site does not show a large number of bodies. And this list of Ukrainian POWs said to be on board, published by Russian state media, contains the names of several soldiers who were already released earlier this month. The Ukrainian president says the facts are still being established and are hard to verify given the wreckage is on Russian territory.
Очевидно, що росіяни граються із життям українських полонених, з почуттями рідних та з емоціями нашого суспільства.
Authorities in Kyiv do not deny shooting down the plane, and Ukraine's military intelligence directorate confirmed a prisoner swap had been planned for Wednesday, but that Moscow had not requested airspace security around the Belgorod area, as had been the case during previous exchanges. This may indicate deliberate actions by Russia aimed at creating a threat to the life and safety of prisoners. Landing a transport plane in a 30-kilometre combat zone cannot be safe and in any case must be discussed by both sides because otherwise it jeopardises the entire exchange process. Russia claims Ukraine was informed.
Украинское руководство прекрасно знало, что по сложившейся практике сегодня будет осуществлена перевозка военно-транспортным самолетом на аэродром Белгород украинских военнослужащих для обмена.
Sorting fact from fiction is difficult in this war, and the Kremlin has a long record of disinformation. Near the crash site, a memorial service for the victims. Not that anyone attending could say with any certainty exactly how many there are. Ben Lewis, SBS World News.
Footage has emerged, purportedly showing a civilian being shot in southern Gaza. The IDF says the footage was edited, calling it an alarming, libelous and gross mischaracterisation of the war.
The mass movement of people from the southern Gazan city of Khan Yunis continues. Everyone started fleeing, this man says, exasperated. He wants a resolution. Smoke billows from the city as the Israeli offensive intensifies. This footage, captured by a local cameraman from the UK's ITV News network on the edge of a so-called safe zone. It appears to show a group of men approaching the combat zone, hands raised, one waving a white flag.
عند الحجة وأخويا وعنده حوالي 50 نازح أو 70 نازح موجودين في البيت الثاني اللي يخش علينا اليهود طلعونا وأخويا ما طلعوش بدنا نروح يعني نطلع إن شاء الله.
What happens next? The man interviewed shot dead. The IDF says the footage has been edited, issuing a statement to ITV News which reads in part, "These despicable accusations can only be deemed as an extension of Hamas propaganda effort to defame the IDF and undermine our objective to dismantle Hamas." Meanwhile, reports a UN training facility which sheltered thousands of people was also hit in the city. This Sun-verified phone video shows the centre on fire.
They've just been hit recently in the afternoon just now, and mass casualties are taking place. Some buildings are ablaze and there's reported of deaths. Many people are trying to flee the scene but unable to do so.
Israel says it has, quote, currently ruled out that this incident is a result of an aerial or artillery strike by the IDF. It meanwhile released this footage which it says shows troops locating and destroying a Hamas tunnel connecting the north and south of the Gaza Strip, around 1.5 kilometres from the Israeli border.
Israel will not give up on the destruction of Hamas, the return of all the hostages, and there will be no security threat from Gaza towards Israel. There will be no ceasefire. In the past, there were pauses for humanitarian purposes. That agreement was breached by Hamas.
It's little comfort as bodies continue to be pulled from the rubble in Rafah.
لا أكل فيه ولا شرب فيه ولا غطاء فيه ولا أي حاجة فيه. نعمل إيه طيب؟ حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل في كل الشعوب العربية. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حدا واقف جنبينا ولا حدا مساندنا.
The Gaza Health Authority says more than 25,000 people have been killed in Gaza since October 7. Tanya Dandrinos, SBS World News.
More than 70 people are now confirmed dead in a gold mine collapse in Mali. Around 100 people were inside when the unregulated facility gave way late last week. There are fears the death toll could rise as a search operation continues. The cause of the collapse is under investigation. Mining accidents are common in Mali, where safety protocols are often ignored by small-scale miners. The capital of Argentina was brought to a 12-hour standstill when the country's largest union called a strike against planned economic austerity measures by right-wing President Javier Milei. Tens of thousands of workers took to the streets in opposition to President Milei's proposed privatisation and spending cuts. People also gathered outside the Argentinian embassies in Peru and Mexico in solidarity. The Prime Minister has mounted an extensive defence of his government's decision to break an election promise and change the Stage 3 tax cuts legislation. Anthony Albanese is appealing to voters to trust that he's making the right call. The opposition has branded him a liar and maintains that voters can no longer take him at his word.
Boon or betrayal? That is the question.
Our government will deliver a tax cut for every single Australian taxpayer.
In the process, breaking a central election promise.
We've changed our position for the right reasons, and I stand by, I accept responsibility for it.
The lowest income earners who are going to miss out completely will now get at least $354. Those on the average wage would have benefited with a tax cut of $625, now boosted to $1,500. But those at the higher end, preparing for more than $9,000 in tax cuts, will now see that shrink to just over $4,000. Treasury confirming this option is broadly revenue neutral, will not add to inflationary pressures and will support labour supply.
Australians, including middle-income earners, can trust me to do the right thing for all the right reasons.
The opposition has labelled it vote buying ahead of a looming Victorian by-election.
The Prime Minister has knowingly and willingly lied to the Australian people. And I don't think the Australian people will easily forget or forgive.
Support in the Senate could rely on going even further.
Is this really the best that Labor can do in the middle of a housing, rental and cost of living crisis?
Prime Ministers who rip up election promises are traditionally punished at the ballot box. The calculation here is that millions of Australians will prioritise the tax cut, and the opposition in the end won't stand in the way of that. It still could be a perilous re-election strategy.
Anthony Albanese? I think he's a good guy. Yeah.
Would you vote for him again in the next election? Nah.
He's a man not to be trusted.
I think he could do with a lot of improvement, particularly in his stance on the war in Gaza.
That message also being sent from outside the National Press Club today.
Shame, Albanese!
Despite Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu's outright rejection of any Palestinian state, the Labor leader is adamant the policy on that won't change.
I support a two-state solution. One of them's called Israel and one of them's called Palestine.
A tricky political year to navigate already, and it's only January.
See you, folks.
Anna Henderson, SBS World News.
Coming up, the world's largest rainforest in drought, why this delicate ecosystem is under strain. Authorities reinforce the safe swim message after 4 people lose their lives in Victoria. And the experimental form of gene therapy that's restored some hearing for children born deaf. Colombia will declare that wildfires burning around the country are a natural disaster as the region continues to deal with a crippling drought. New findings show that severe drought in the Amazon was made 30 times more likely because of global warming. The study found that without the impacts of burning fossil fuels, the drought in the world's largest forest would have been far less extreme.
The river system feeding the lungs of the earth. The Amazon now at its most precarious point since records began. The waterway is a lifeline for Indigenous and rural communities, a key form of food and transportation, and a source of electricity for countries like Brazil, which relies on hydro for 80% of its power generation. The delicate ecosystem under strain from an extreme drought since the middle of last year.
Actually see a really strong message about the influence of global warming on this drought, and that's both in the present and in the future.
A new study has found the Amazon River to be at its lowest level in 120 years, threatening the livelihoods of an estimated 30 million people across 9 countries. It attributed the lack of rainfall in part to the naturally occurring El Niño weather pattern. But crucially, the study found the rapid drying of the landscape was mainly due to increased global temperatures. Researchers also say the drying landscape has made forest fires even more destructive and could push the Amazon more quickly towards a point of no return.
I think we should be really worried with the health of the Amazon forest.
In Brazil's capital, Indigenous leaders launched a new program to repair degraded areas of the forest. Trees, which are a major store of carbon, seen as vital to slowing global warming. The rate of deforestation in the region is still rampant, but it's halved from the year before. Taisok Husey, SBS World News.
Victorian authorities say they'll restore a memorial to Captain Cook, which was vandalised in a Bayside Melbourne suburb. The St Kilda statue of the British explorer, credited as the first European to make contact with Australia's east coast in 1770, was sawn off at the ankles. The plinth was spray painted with the words, "The colony will fall."
This sort of vandalism really has no place in our community, and we'll be working. I want to signal today that we will be working with council to repair and reinstate the statue.
Melbourne's Queen Victoria Memorial, next to the city's Royal Botanic Gardens, was also targeted in a pre-Australia Day attack, daubed with red paint. A fourth person has died in hospital after Victoria's worst mass drowning in nearly 20 years. The incident unfolded at an unpatrolled beach near Phillip Island in the state's southeast. Distraught family were on the scene as responders desperately tried to save the victims.
It's a coveted spot for surfers and summer days enjoyed. But off this coastline, rips are an ever-present danger.
Taking your life into your own hands sort of thing if you choose to swim here.
Yesterday afternoon, wading in these waters proved to be a fatal decision for a man and 3 women. Relatives left distraught at the scene.
This tragedy has taken the lives of 4 people, and it's fair to say that the impact will be profound on those families.
The 4 were pulled unconscious from water near the unpatrolled beach at Forest Caves, a popular sightseeing spot. The dead, a 43-year-old female visiting from overseas, and 2 women and a man in their 20s from Melbourne's southeast. A helicopter airlifted one in a critical condition, but she died in hospital today.
Those 4 people were swept up in what we believe to be a RIP condition.
2 off-duty lifesavers were the first to rush to their aid. CPR used as they tried to resuscitate the victims. 3 pronounced dead at the beach.
Just a terrible, terrible tragedy.
There's now been 19 fatal drownings in the state since December 1st. Already 2 more than last summer.
Wherever possible, head to a patrolled location. If we can see you, we can save you.
Beachgoers reminded of the need to heed safety warnings as work continues to ensure that message is accessible for all.
Get appropriate communication in language out to different groups in our community.
Unseen hazards the most treacherous, with rips the leading cause of drownings in the country.
It may look safe, but the chances are, if you're unaware of the dangers, you're going to get yourself into trouble.
A summer safety plea as police prepare a report for the coroner. Tom Stainer, SBS World News.
The Australian of the Year Awards are about to get underway at the National Arboretum in Canberra. Since its inception in 1960, the awards have recognised outstanding contributions by Australians from all walks of life. And a warning to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers that the following story contains images of someone who has died.
Ahead of a day of conflicting emotions, First Nations finalists for Australian of the Year joined together. Among them, 2 nominees for Young Australian of the Year, actor and musician Nayara and scientist Tiani Adamson, joined by Yolngu linguist Yalme Yunupingu, up for Senior Australian, all smiles with last year's recipient Tom Kalma, as the photo ops moved to the lodge. The Prime Minister and his partner Jodie Hayden welcoming the outgoing Australian of the Year.
Congratulations on the year.
Thank you.
It's been
an extraordinarily big year. Taryn Brumford using her platform to promote body positivity.
It's been a big challenge and sometimes a delight to really change people's minds. It's not about #LoveYourBody. It's about how we all feel about our bodies.
Among the finalists for the Top Gong this year, Michelle Turvey, an advocate for victims of crime. Her teenage son Cassius died after he was attacked walking home from school.
Welcome.
Thank you. Indigenous health leader Janine Muhammad also in the running. King, and doctors Georgina Long and Richard Scolyer, whose breakthroughs have made melanoma a curable cancer.
We're striving very hard to get to a goal of 0 deaths from melanoma.
Rural women's health advocate Stephanie Trethway, environmental scientist Tim Jarvis, and youth advocates Blair McFarland and Marco Rene, all hoping to use the platform to promote their cause.
Nothing better than changing someone or helping someone live a great life.
As another resident of the lodge joined in the celebrations.
Can we all say there's no place like home?
All winners in their own right. The excitement is building as the finalists make their way down the red carpet ahead of tonight's big announcement. While they hail from different walks of life and champion different causes, they are united in the recognition they've already made a positive difference to Australia. Sarah Tomevska, SBS World News.
And head to the SBS News website to read a brief history on Australia Day observance, how it's taken different forms over the years and when it was first marked on January the 26th. Millions of Australians will experience sweltering temperatures well into the weekend. The long weekend, that is. The heat is expected to be wide, reaching temperatures above 40 degrees for large parts of the country. Heatwave warnings are in force for parts of New South Wales, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia and the Northern Territory. And experts fear extreme heat is becoming a silent killer, as it continues to be one of the deadliest natural forces in Australia. I've been speaking with Professor Ollie Jay, the Director of the Heat and Health Research Incubator at the University of Sydney. Thanks for joining us, Ollie. Now, extreme heat has been one of the biggest causes of hospitalisations over the last decade. With that in mind, and of course with millions of Australians bracing for heat wave conditions, what are the best ways to stay safe and heed these heat warnings?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is really kind of listen to our body, think and plan ahead. Try to better understand when the hottest times of the day are going to be and try to avoid excess exposure to those peak heat stress conditions. Thinking about planning our daily activities to reduce the vigorous activities that we do to the cooler parts of the day, seeking shade as much as possible. Things like this will really help us deal with these extreme heat conditions.
Well, a lot of people, of course, will be putting their air conditioning or fans on blast, but both of those options can be costly. How effective are those choices and what are the best options in terms of our health and also our hip pockets?
There's no doubt that air conditioning is the most effective way of reducing the negative health impacts of extreme heat, because you're then not exposed to these extreme heat conditions if you have an air conditioner. The issue is that many of the most vulnerable to extreme heat actually don't have access to air conditioning, or many people own an air conditioner, but they're really concerned, as they experience the pressures of the cost of living, that they're reluctant to actually use that air conditioner. So one of the things that we can do, which is even relevant in a blackout, but if you have access to water, is that you can apply water to the skin surface with a towel or with wet clothing, and then that water then evaporates from the skin and keeps you cool.
Professor Ollie Jay, thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Emergency services were called to Shark Island in Sydney Harbour this morning following reports that a seaplane had crashed into the water. Police say they've been told that one of the pontoons had sustained damage and fell off, resulting in the crash. A spokesman from Sydney Seaplanes told SBS World News that the aircraft struck a wave or an object in the water during an aborted takeoff. A passenger sustained minor injuries and was treated at the scene. And in the Northern Territory, emergency food is being dropped to a remote community cut off by flooding. For the past 2 days, flights from Darwin have been delivering food to the community of Yarralin in the flooded Victoria River region. More than 550 people are in the community and 2 flights a day have been needed to maintain supplies. The Territory government says Yarralin's population has doubled due to recent cultural activities. Gene editing treatments carried out in the US and China have shown people who were born deaf could be able to hear. One 11-year-old boy from Morocco can hear for the first time thanks to a clinical trial involving the new form of surgery.
No one likes going to hospital, but for 11-year-old Assam Dam, surgery is likely to change his life. If the operation works, he'll experience the world of sound for the first time. There are an estimated 150 genes that can cause hearing loss at birth. The doctor says Assam's otoferlin gene has mutated. He aims to replace it with one that works.
It's exciting because if we can get the gene back in and get it functioning, it should restore hearing.
A functional otoferlin gene helps hair cells transmit sounds to the brain. The procedure relies on state-of-the-art technology, and Assam was told there's no guarantee it'll work. But the surgeon is confident. Success. Assam is now the first person to get gene therapy in the United States for congenital deafness. 3 months on, the tests continue. But through interpreters, he says, there's no sound I don't like. They're all good.
His hearing is improved from a state of complete and profound deafness with no sound at all to the level of mild to moderate hearing loss, which you can say is a mild disability. And that's very exciting for us and for everyone.
Papa.
Several gene therapy trials are underway in the US, Europe and China, where a handful of children can now hear in both ears, according to the Lancet Journal.
One of the most important aspects of the study really is to open up a door to show this type of gene therapy can work.
Each year in Australia, up to 500 children are born with moderate to profound deafness. That's more than one a day. But for any interested parents, access to treatment will take time.
It's not likely you have this gene, and it's not for every gene. It's just this one gene that we can treat now on this clinical trial. But stay tuned for more in the next 5 to 10 years.
And what's Assam's favourite sound? People talking. Gary Cox, SBS World News.
Energy bill relief could be on the way for Australian households following a record-breaking volume of renewable energy output at the end of last year. Rochelle Harrison Pless has been following developments. She joins us now with more details. So, Rochelle, when can consumers expect to see their power bills cut?
Janice, while nothing is set in stone, the price slump does raise the likelihood of significant cost reductions at the next round of price setting on July 1st. The energy market operator says wholesale electricity prices averaged $48 per megawatt hour over the December quarter. That's a 24% drop on the previous quarter and around half of what it was a year ago. Contributing to the fall, a record increase in renewables and rooftop solar power, along with lower prices for thermal coal. The news is expected to be welcomed by the Albanese government, which has pledged to cut household energy costs at a rate of $275 a year by 2025.
We know that the more renewable energy we get into the electricity system, the cheaper prices will be. Again, though, that's a bumpy road to get to that point because the electricity system today, a lot of the generators we have are really old. We don't have enough generators. And so if we have a shortage, prices can spike very dramatically in the short term. But over the long term, they should absolutely keep going down.
The renewables increase also drove down East Coast emissions, moving the government closer to its 2030 target to reduce Australia's output by 43%. The consumer watchdog will launch a 12-month inquiry into supermarkets in an attempt to drive fairer pricing for customers and suppliers and boost competition. The Prime Minister says the investigation will also look into allegations of price gouging and complement an ongoing inquiry into the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct.
For me, it's this simple. When farmers are selling their product for less, supermarkets should be charging Australians at the checkout less. Today I also announced that the government will fund consumer organisation Choice to provide shoppers with a clear understanding of how supermarkets are performing on this score. Our government is prepared to take action to make sure that Australians are not paying $1 more than they should for the things that they need.
The ACCC will produce an interim report later this year and a final report with findings and recommendations in early 2025. Overseas now, and China's struggling economy will receive some welcome stimulus following a decision by the central bank to cut the reserve ratio requirement. That means banks will be required to hold less money, enabling them to lend more to encourage spending. The 50 basis point cut will come into effect next month, allowing around $1 trillion yuan, or over 212 billion Australian dollars, to flow through the economy.
We expect a relatively rapid credit expansion in the first quarter of 2024. PBOC will guide financial institutions to grasp the pace and solidly support the real economy, and we expect that the pace of credit investment will be more balanced throughout the year.
This is the first reduction in Chinese reserve requirements this year, after 2 cuts in 2023 and the biggest since December 2021. The People's Bank of China says there is also room for additional easing of monetary policy. Well, that news was well received by the mining industry, which led today's gains, propelling the ASX 0.5% higher. Healthcare group ResMed a clear standout on some positive quarterly results. The banks were mixed, while pizza brand Domino's tumbled on some tough-to-digest sales numbers.
The company downgrading its first half profit expectations by around about 17%, mainly on slow growth in Japan and France and other parts of Europe. Having said that, Australian sales were still very, very good. And the other aspect there, of course, is they withdrew their guidance for FY24, and that's never a good look.
And in currencies, the Australian dollar is steady against the greenback and was down against the other majors. Over in the US, Tesla has warned of a notable slowdown in 2024 vehicle sales as it builds its next generation car. The company's stock price fell significantly in extended trade to be down around 8% on reports of slowing revenue growth over the December quarter. Analysts say steep global price cuts on Tesla vehicles are partly to blame. And in case you missed it, Australia's population has tipped over 27 million, nearly 2 decades earlier than the milestone was predicted. Counting over 624,000 more people in the 12 months to June 2023, it's the fastest population growth in the country's recent history, and 41% larger than the previous record when the numbers jumped by more than 442,000 in 2009. Post-pandemic, migration surged, but slowed at the end of 2023. The Commonwealth Bank says the slowdown is expected to continue this year, driven by international students departing Australia and tightening visa requirements. According to ABS projections, we could reach up to 30.8 million people, Janice, in just 8 years' time.
Not long at all. Thanks so much, Rochelle. Well, coming up in a flap, the battle over buttered chicken and why this food fight has gone all the way to an Indian court. But there is no doubt about India's latest world #1 tennis player. Buttered chicken is facing its biggest judgment, but not from taste testers, but rather the Delhi High Court. A legal dispute's broken out over just who invented the much-loved dish, and it's causing fierce debate over the history of the recipe, known and loved far outside India.
It's a perennial favourite of Indian cuisine around the world.
Butter chicken pot pie, butter chicken pizza, butter chicken sandwich, it's everywhere.
But across India, the creamy delicacy known, even on the subcontinent, as butter chicken, is causing a stir. The meat of the issue?
Who invented butter chicken?
The management of Delhi restaurant chain Mutti Mel claims his grandfather was behind the culinary masterpiece.
We will not allow anybody to take away our legacy. We will not allow anyone to infringe on our brand.
They're suing a rival chain for $360,000 in damages for falsely laying claim to the dish. A charge they deny, saying their late family member also deserves credit.
Butter chicken and dal makhani are dishes which were invented in a restaurant called Moti Mahal.
And this Moti Mahal restaurant was founded by 3 partners, and Mr. Kundalal Jaggi was one of the co-founders of that restaurant. And that is why we use this name.
In Sydney's Little India, passions are just as spicy.
One of the most selling dish in our restaurant. People love it.
Urban legend here holds it was created as a sweeter version of tandoori chicken, diced in gravy for a tourist in a hurry.
He had to catch a flight, he went to this hotel and he requested any mild gravy will be fine for me.
The ideal accompaniments to the perfect butter chicken, garlic naan, basmati rice, maybe even a cold beer. And the key ingredient is, of course, butter.
With the butter, you get the shine, you get that, taste of the butter chicken.
A taste that everyone can agree is delicious. Edwina Guinan, SBS World News.
Well, India's Rohan Bopanna and Australia's Matthew Ebden have scored a superb semi-finals doubles victory at Melbourne Park today. Bopanna celebrated his rise to the #1 spot in men's doubles in style. At the age of 43, he's become the oldest man to achieve that feat, and he held his nerve alongside Ebden to make the final. Australia's Storm Hunter just failed to make it into the final of the women's doubles.
This is Rohan Bopanna's 17th Australian Open appearance. Not only was he partnering Matthew Ebden into the semi-final for the first time, he did so as the new world #1. India and Australia are more used to being rivals on the cricket field, but in this contest, Ebden and Bopanna were in perfect harmony.
Oh, what a point.
They secured the opening set against China's Zhang Zhujiang and Thomas Machach of the Czech Republic and seemed in control. But their opponents not only snared the second set, but sent it to a tiebreaker in the decider. But the 43-year-old Bopanna and 36-year-old Ebden kept their nerve to reach the final, where they'll meet Italian duo Simone Bolelli and Andrea Vavasori in Saturday's final.
Bopanna, and for the 3rd year in a row, there'll be an Aussie in the men's doubles final. Matt Ebden and Rohan Bopanna.
Last night, Carlos Alcaraz's campaign was ended, but it took one of Alexander Zverev's most impressive Grand Slam victories to do it. The German let the world #1 off the hook after establishing a 2-set lead, Alcaraz coming from 5-2 down in the third to send it to a decider.
Time to light it up.
But instead of a dramatic comeback, Zverev closed the door to clinch it 6-4 in just over 3 hours.
For the first part of the season, or actually throughout the year, I wasn't a slam contender. I wasn't a contender to win tournaments like that. So if I am now, I'm very happy about that.
In the women's draw, China's Qinwen Zheng reached the semi-final, but only after overcoming a shaky start against Anna Kalinskaya. The unseeded Russian took the first set before Zheng hit back strongly to win the next 2, hitting 42 winners and 10 aces. That was enough for a place in the semis and also secured her a spot inside the world's top 10 come Monday morning.
Last year, when I was in the Australia Open, I wanted to be top 10, and 1 year later, I'm here. That was an amazing moment, guys. Yeah.
She faces Ukrainian qualifier Diana Yastremska in the last 4. John Baldock, SBS World News.
Australia's 11-match winning run in pink ball cricket shows no sign of ending. The second test is underway at the Gabba, with the West Indies already in big trouble. Mitch Starc took 2 wickets in the opening session to reach 350 test wickets. The Windies 5 down for just 64 at the dinner break. Well, Iraq scored a dramatic late winner against Vietnam to book top spot in the Asian Cup Group B overnight. Iraq had led 2-1, but it seemed as if Vietnam's injury time equaliser had earned a share of the points. But in the 12th minute of added time, Iraq earned a penalty, which was calmly slotted home by Ayman Hussein. The country's 3rd straight win sparked wild scenes in Doha and also in Sydney. The Iraqi community hitting the streets in the early hours of the morning. The Australian leg of the World Rugby Sevens series begins tomorrow in Perth. Australia's women's team are on a good winning run, but twin Brazilian sisters are hoping that success might help to grow the game back home for them.
Brazilians playing football on the beach is part of the nation's cultural identity. But rugby playing twins Talia and Talita da Silva Costa are from a different mould.
Não, nem existia quando eu era criança, né? Nem o esporte em si, que a gente começou no atletismo, então era muito difícil as oportunidades, tanto que a gente teve que encerrar pouco a carreira do esporte porque não tinha retorno.
In places like São Luís, where the twins grew up, opportunities are limited. But their rugby journey with the Yarras takes another important step this week. The nickname symbolises women's courage and collective strength.
Então, ver as portas que se abriram, eu sendo uma Yara, eu acho que incentiva muito outras pessoas, outras crianças e mulheres a sonhar também.
The hot conditions here in Perth will be a familiar feel for the Brazilian women's rugby sevens team. And while that might provide them with an important advantage, players here are hoping to impress Brazilian selectors ahead of the Paris 2024 Olympics.
A escalação dos Jogos Olímpicos vai ser o reflexo de todo o meu esforço, do meu desempenho em campo.
Brazil's rugby growth is at an early stage of development, but one thing that's universally feared on the field is raw speed.
And here she is, Dalia Costa! Oh, she's got great speed!
That pace is something not even her twin Talita can match.
Cada tem seu potencial. Eu sou mais pro lado ali do contato, da força, eu tô ganhando dela, mas na velocidade ela me deixa bem atrás.
Não tem melhor. E como ela falou, tem habilidade diferente. Eu sou rápida e ela é forte, e assim a gente se completa.
Brazil will take on Fiji in the Perth Series opener tomorrow. Christopher Tan, SBS World News.
Coming up, the weather details and penguin spotting by satellite. The new discovery helping scientists track them right across Antarctica. To the weather forecast now, and severe tropical cyclone Kirrily will make landfall tonight, and it's forecast to be downgraded to a tropical low tomorrow. Troughs will bring heavy rain and gusty winds to North Queensland and showers to other parts of Queensland and northeast New South Wales. To the major centres now, windy but sunny in Sydney, a possible shower ahead for Canberra and Melbourne. It'll be windy in Hobart with showers developing, partly cloudy skies in Adelaide. The sun will be out in Perth, a possible storm and heavy falls ahead for Darwin and partly cloudy in Brisbane. Checking conditions further afield now, unsettled and thundery in Nundy, showers ahead for Port Vila, partly cloudy skies in Auckland, fine and sunny in Wellington. To Southeast Asia now, fine and bright in Phnom Penh, thunderstorms in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore and Jakarta, and some rain ahead for Dili. Let's head further north now. Fine and bright blue skies in Beijing, Tokyo and Shanghai, partly cloudy in Hong Kong and Hanoi. Heading west, some rainfall ahead for Beirut, thunderstorms in Jerusalem, a few showers in Baghdad, partly cloudy skies in Islamabad. To Europe, cold and snowing in Stockholm and Moscow, fine weather on the way for Warsaw, a few showers in London, fine weather in Paris and foggy in Rome. To Africa, sunshine ahead for Algiers, partly cloudy in Casablanca, Dakar and Lagos, showers in Nairobi and Johannesburg. In South America, all clear in Caracas, cloudy in Bogotá and Lima, overcast skies in Asunción and Buenos Aires and sunny in Santiago. And for North America, showers in Vancouver, some rain ahead in New York, snowfall in Denver, fine and bright in LA and partly cloudy in Havana. 4 new emperor penguin nesting sites have been found in Antarctica. It's a discovery that will help scientists track the species, which are under increasing pressure from climate change.
Emperors are among the hardiest animals on Earth. They live life in the freezer, breeding and nurturing their young in temperatures as low as -60. But knowing where they all are on a continent that's so vast and remote isn't easy. It's why scientists have been using satellites. When the birds huddle together, it's possible to see them. These are the 4 new colonies as seen from space. Their locations have been found as they stain the ice with excrement. Zooming closer, the ice has turned a mucky brown. The discoveries bring the total number of colonies to 66. There's perhaps 500,000 individual emperors on Earth. But scientists are concerned for their future. The sea ice on which they live is becoming unreliable.
We know that sea ice will decline with warming temperatures, and that's going to affect the chicks, and the chicks will go into the water and not survive. So it's quite a grim scenario. What we hope is that they'll be able to adapt and they'll be able to move to more stable ice.
If global warming can be constrained, say scientists, and other pressures such as fishing are avoided, these iconic animals can find a resilient future.
Jonathan Amos with that report. Recapping our top stories now. And severe tropical cyclone Kirrily has intensified to a Category 3 system as it tracks towards Townsville in North Queensland. The storm could cross the coast around 10 o'clock local time, bringing wind gusts of up to 165 kilometres per hour. The Prime Minister has defended his government's decision to break an election promise and change the Stage 3 tax cuts legislation. Anthony Albanese is appealing for voters to trust him, but the opposition has branded him a liar. That is the world this Thursday. If you missed any of tonight's bulletin, catch up on SBS On Demand, and for the latest stories, head to the SBS News website. Liz Maddock will be back with our next bulletin. That's just before 10:30 tonight. For now, from the team, good night.